This is our loneliness workshop, and I'll be dealing with some stuff about loneliness. So if you have questions after every little section, we can chat a little bit. I have more information in my brain than I could put on paper, like always. So, anyways, just like to welcome everybody online, here in person. Hope you get something out of this. Loneliness is one of those things that the U.S., Canada, Great Britain, most of Europe, across the world is actually focusing on, because they have noticed there since COVID there has been an epidemic of this, and it is starting to impact people's health. So a lot of the stuff that we're going to deal with today is actually going to be pretty pertinent to ongoing struggles of about 30 to 40% of Canadians, Americans, people from Britain, and probably everywhere else. So anyways, my name is Jamie. I'm from Milton. As you most of you know, I have a bachelor's of theological studies, and I focused on the area of youth, which I don't use too much except for punks, and also took a minor in counseling. So I took a lot of counseling courses and have the framework for that. And I've been working for the last 30 years since I graduated, trying to get counseling programs started and getting people to understand counseling principles. So anyways, I'm from Milton. There was a giant snow plow I was behind all morning, so it took an extra 10 minutes to get here. We hope you're going to enjoy this. We want this to be a safe place to ask questions and kind of understand about loneliness. If you have any questions, let us know. Our workshop order is going to be some facts. What is loneliness? The definition, a loneliness test, a case study from Mark. Mark is the case study. Where loneliness comes from, another case study with Sarah, and how to deal with loneliness. So any questions so far? You are so talkative this morning. I hope you guys start talking more. All right, let's get to some facts about loneliness. Are you ready for this? All right. One, loneliness does not depend on how many friends or relationships you have. That is a common myth about loneliness. You could have 100 friends and be lonely. You could have 2 friends and not be lonely. So it's not based on relationships. It's not based on friendships. Loneliness is actually a little broader than that. Number 2, 40% of people in North America are lonely at any given time. So when you are on the subway and there's 100 people, 40 of those people are probably experiencing some form of loneliness. Now that's 1 in 3 to 1 in 2 people. So a lot of people are experiencing this. That's why Canada, US, a whole bunch of Western nations are actually trying to divert resources into studying loneliness and actually coming up with ways to help people who are lonely. They've done some studies, and loneliness is as dangerous as cigarette smoking. How dangerous is cigarette smoking? Yeah, if you smoke 15 cigarettes a day, that has the same impact on your health as loneliness does. So I hope you're starting to see just how brutal loneliness is. Feeling lonely increases the risk for dementia by 31%. So if you decide you're going to be lonely and stay in a state of loneliness and do nothing about it, they have done study after study after study to show that it actually increases your chances of getting dementia and early onset dementia by 31%. And for people that are in a senior's home, I think it moves up to like 50%. This is good information for Canada. Loneliness actually makes us feel colder. So in the middle of winter, when it's minus 50 outside, you actually feel like it's minus 51. I don't know about you, but that makes winter longer and colder. They've actually tested people's skin temperature, and they found out that the skin temperature of people who are experiencing the emotion of loneliness is actually lower, and they feel colder than people who are actually having a good time and enjoying life or something else. That is just showing the impact that it has on our body as well as our mind. And the last fact is more than 60% of people who are married, of lonely people, are married. So loneliness is a huge problem. 40% of people in North America, but of those 40%, 60% of them are married. And that usually means they're between the ages of about 25 and 45. So that would be one of the biggest age ranges. What did you think about those facts? Have you thought about those? Have you heard any of this stuff before? Have you heard how devastating loneliness can be on your health? Some people just treat it like, yeah, I'm a little lonely today, but it can have a huge impact. So anyways, just some facts. Definition. At its most basic definition, loneliness is feeling alone or disconnected from others. It's a subjective feeling, and I want you to focus on that. It's a subjective feeling. So it's not something that's based on a huge bunch of facts. Like, I have 10 friends, so I have this much loneliness, or I did this or I did that, and I have this much loneliness. It's actually a perception of you looking at your situation, how many friends you have and how many relationships you have and what's happened and this, that, and the other thing. It's actually an opinion that you form based on where you are in life. And it's different for every person. It's a subjective feeling that happens when our relationships are perceived as lacking something. And it reflects the difference between what a person desires and what a person perceives is reality. It's an emotion that is common to all mankind and it can be a normal emotion based on our situation in life. For instance, when you lose your best friend or when you lose a spouse, you will experience loneliness for a period of time. That is a normal experience of loneliness. And there are a whole bunch of events that happen in life that bring you into a state where you're lonely for a little while. But chronic loneliness or staying lonely for longer than a week or two, chronic loneliness is actually a perception, and it's a way of thinking. It is a way of evaluating your place in life and your situation. And if you look at your situation and you say, hey, my friendships are great, I got some of the best friends in the world, you're going to experience less loneliness than a person who looks at his situation in life and says, wow, you guys are my friends. Oh, I'm so hurting. Why couldn't somebody important be my friend? Like, I'm important. Why couldn't you guys be at least as important as I am? No? It's a subjective evaluation of your relationships, your friendships, this, that, and the other thing. A little while ago, my sister passed away, and I was they had a celebration of life for her, and I was there, and I was sitting down talking to a few friends, and I began to reflect, and I missed my sister, so I was kind of little bummed out. Until I sat there and I looked around the room, and I saw Andrea sitting there holding a little, coffee or something. And Mike was up there talking with Liam. And I looked around at some friends I've had for quite a while. And I began to evaluate, saying, hey, these people came out to support me. They're my friends. And I distinctly remember somewhere in the afternoon, I just started reflecting on the people that came out, to just support me and stuff like that. and a feeling of joy began bubbling up in my heart. And I was actually sitting there with a smile on my face going, I got some great friends. And I was just saying, thank you, God, for the friendships I have. It was pretty awesome. Because what I was perceiving was a support community that had my best interests at heart. Amen. And because I was reflecting on that, and that was my view, and that was my perception, I missed my sister, but the loneliness kind of faded, and there was this joy of support, joy of being together in a crowd, and some of my best and oldest friends, and people were there. And again, I don't know if you noticed me. I was sitting in the chair, just kind of leaning back, and there was a smile on my face. And you're wondering, what are you thinking? I was thinking about the friends that I had who, emailed me and came out and said, we'd like to be there for you. Loneliness is a perception about your relationships and where you are in life. If you want to change loneliness, you have to change your perception. Does everybody understand this definition? Does everybody understand what I'm trying to get at? If you're a teenager and you have, an attitude problem, oh, I hate life, I hate school, what's going to happen is their perception is, I don't have enough friends. What are they going to experience? They will experience loneliness. They might have some great friends. They might have enough friends. They might have some great relationships. But if their perception, and they start thinking, there's something wrong with me, there's something wrong with my life, there's something wrong here. When they start down that negative road of thinking, the emotion of loneliness will develop and get stronger. And that's one thing we have to understand about loneliness. In fact, as we go through some of our workshops, we're going to understand this about anxiety. We're going to understand this about depression. There's a whole line of problems that come with the way we think about them and the way we receive them. And one small change of thinking, one small attitude change or perception change, and all of a sudden these emotions start changing based on what you're thinking. So any questions with the definition or anything I've said here? Give you a chance to respond before we go on. Yes. You got to speak up because I'm half deaf. Yes? Loneliness is both something that you can help with as a friend, but it's also something that the person has to do and take actions towards. If I'm struggling with depression and you come up to me and say, oh, come on, Jamie, cheer up. I don't want to cheer up. It's like my life's rotten. It stinks. And I'm going to always, play the poor me card. What's going to happen with all your support? You ever tried supporting somebody that doesn't want to listen to, positive vibes or anything? What happens? You what? Yeah, you might stop trying. What? These emotions are contagious if you get sucked into their perception. They might try to convince you, well, look at my life. I only have 2 friends. How many friends do you have? Well, you got 3. Well, that's still not very good. I mean, Joe over there has 5 friends, and Pete, he's got like 20. It's like, I want to be like Pete. Why don't you want to be like Pete? Well, yeah, 3 friends is kind of low. It's like, yeah, you can get sucked in easy if you buy their perception. But their perception really isn't based on facts. It's based on, here's my situation, and here's how I'm evaluating it. And I'm evaluating my position in life negatively. And because I'm evaluating it negatively, the feelings, those negative feelings are going to follow. If you look at your life and say, hey, you know what? Maybe I only have 4 friends, but those 4 friends would die for me. So I'm in a better place than some people who only have one friend that would die for them, or some people who would only die for themselves. Yeah, it's like, it's all how you look at it. And one of the ways of dealing with loneliness is changing your perception. So, anyways, good question. Anything else? I will show you when we get down to what can we do about loneliness. I will show you a plan that you can walk people through that will help them not just with loneliness, but a lot of emotional problems. And if you can get a handle on this, in fact, when we do our workshops, we'll probably go through this multiple times with different emotions, and you will get used to the CBT way of dealing with emotions. And if you can get a handle on that, you can help almost anybody immediately. I was at camp once, and there was this 8-year-old kid get down to the tree house, and he looked up and he wouldn't go in the tree house. So I noticed he was on the ground, kind of just by himself. So I walked up and said, "Anything wrong, little buddy?" Because I was camp counselor, and that's what camp counselors do. And he said, "Yeah, I'm scared of heights." And I said, "Scared of heights? Yeah, I don't like, going up very high." And I said, "Well, how high can you make it up?" And he looked and he said, "Maybe the second step." The second step is like here. So I said, "No, you don't like climbing trees." He says, "Well, I'd like to go up there because everybody's up there having a time, and he's by himself with me down on the ground. And if you want to be alone with me on the ground, it's, everybody's having a party up there. No, bad place to be." His perception was negative. Anyways, I just looked at him and I said, would you like to get over your fear? I can help you. I can help you get over your fear. And he says, how can you help me with fear of heights? I said, "Well, I need to understand where it came from first. So when's the first time you remember being afraid?" And he says, "Oh, the first time I can remember was when I was a little kid. My mother was carrying me in some kind of, device. And we were walking down a boardwalk on a pier, and she was walking close to the edge, and I was swinging over, and I was looking down. There's all this water below me, and I was scared out of my life." And I said, "Oh, that's pretty scary." So anyways, he told me how his mother used to just carry him, and carried him in her right hand, and he hung over sometimes things that scared him, and he was kind of holding on for dear life. So I said, "All right, well, would you like to get rid of your fear?" And he said, "Sure." So anyways, I took him through a couple exercises relating to his memory. And after talking to him for 10 minutes, he just looked at me and said, "I can go up the treehouse." And he actually went up the treehouse, and he wasn't scared of heights for the first time in his life. Now, he was 8. So, but anyways, that's how quick emotions can change and things can change if you change the thinking behind it. And all I had to convince him was, instead of having to be afraid, he started relying on his mother that she would never drop him and that he was safe. And as soon as he decided that, yeah, it was a long way down to the ocean, but his mother had him safe and secure, his whole perception of fear changed, and he was able to climb that tree. And I did that in about 10 or 15 minutes. That's how quick perceptions can change if you work on things the right way. So we'll be talking about that a little bit later. Any other questions about this? All right. We have a loneliness test. It is in your worksheets. If you would like to give that a quick run through, there are 10 questions. It ranges, these are the 10 questions. You probably can't see them from where you're at. I can barely see them. But you rank them from 1 to 4, 1 being never, 4 being always, and then you add up the scores. So the maximum score would be 40. The minimum score would be 10. And 20 is about average. So if you want to take a brief look at that, I will explain This is a short form of a test which is online, the UCLA loneliness test. And in there's 20 questions, and it's got a little bit more in depth to it, but we'll give you a moment to complete that. If you're online, I can read the questions to you if you don't have our notes. How often do you feel unhappy doing so many things alone? Never, rarely, sometimes, always. How often do you feel you have no one to talk to? How often do you feel you cannot tolerate being so alone? How often do you feel as if no one understands you? How often do you find yourself waiting for people to call or write? How often do you feel completely alone? How often do you feel unable to reach out and communicate with those around you? How often do you feel starved of company? How often do you feel it is difficult for you to make friends? And how often do you feel shut out or excluded by others? 10 simple questions. 10's the lowest, 40's the highest. Most of us will be probably around 15 to 20, 25. Some of us may be higher, but it gives kind of a range. When I always did these tests, there was always with somebody watching me, and I'm like, I'd quickly go through the test and figure out what it was going to do to me if I failed it, and I would put ones down. And the psychologist or whoever was dealing with me knew I was like rigging the test, but there's no way they were getting answers out of me. So anyways, this is just for your own kind of view. These are common thoughts or kind of common feelings that people who experience loneliness will actually have. These are sometimes common experiences you may feel occasionally when you're a little down or when something bad has happened in life. If you're looking at the score, 20 is an average. So if you go across North America, most people would score in the 20 range. That's anywhere from 15 to 22, 23, 25. That is a normal range. Everybody feels loneliness. Anybody here never feel lonely at times? Pretty much a universal emotion. However, if you get a little higher than 25 and you're up in the 30-point range, at 30 and above is a high level of loneliness, and you actually might have, a real problem with loneliness that you might actually need to talk to a counselor about. When you're up above 30, it is life-changing, and your life is not changing for the good. If you're somewhere between 25 and 29, so if you rank higher than 25, meaning you're a little higher than average, it's at levels above 25 that it actually starts to have an impact on your health. Your rate of dementia increases. It's like you're smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Different things begin to happen. You begin to have an increased stress response, and cortisol starts streaming through your blood, and you have problems losing weight, or you gain weight. You start having problems with anxiety and depression, anywhere 25 and above. Now, that's just a short form of some of these tests you can find online, but that's kind of how to rate it. That's kind of how to look at it. Did anybody get 30 or above? I got some recommendations for you. You don't have to share, but most of us are in the lower range. So, are you coming in? How you doing? Hey. Are you grabbing a donut and staying a while? All right. All right. It's safe beside Mike. It's not so safe beside David, but anyways, there are a bunch of these tests online, and you can go through them, find out where your loneliness is. Again, if you're a little higher than average, 25 and up, you want to seriously consider some of the stuff that's going to be later in this workshop, and you want to be able to actually go through your thoughts and process them, because your health, the longer you stay in an above average feeling of loneliness with the accompanying perception, that is going to affect your health in the long term. Any questions with the loneliness test? No questions? Everybody's good with it? All right. We are going to go through a case study. Now, as I read this case study, I want you to be thinking, Mark is one of these people that has a higher than average feeling of loneliness. I want you to be making little notes or thinking, what is it about Mark that is creating this feeling of loneliness? Where did he go wrong in the past? What's he doing wrong today? What issues are in his life that he needs to deal with if he is going to deal with his loneliness? So are you ready? You've got your thinking caps on? All right. I'm looking for some good answers here. So if you guys just look at me and don't say anything, this workshop is going to be very difficult. I have to go online and see if my wife's there and see if she has anything to say. But she probably won't say anything because her throat's probably very sore. So here is Mark's story, and I will read it to you. So put your thinking caps on. It all started when we moved, and I started secondary school at 12. I didn't really settle in and felt left out. I've always been shy and a bit timid. I stopped joining in because I thought others wouldn't want me there. And I didn't know how to join in anyways. So I concentrated on my studies and thought that at some point I would have a good job, hobbies, and a family. I thought that if I work hard, things will work out. It feels like the loneliness that started in secondary school has followed me throughout my life. I constantly feel like I don't belong, like I'm somehow different from everyone else. I don't know how to make friends, and since no one seems to want to get to know me, there must be something wrong with me. I'm crushed because I've tried different things and it feels like it doesn't make a difference. I get anxious and irritated because everyone else has their life together and I'm just stuck. I don't understand why my life has turned out like this. Mark has a problem with loneliness, and he's kind of given us his little story here. So give it a thought. I see some people writing some notes, getting some thoughts down there. What is something about Mark's story that kind of hit you or stood out? What are some of the factors in Mark's story that is leading to his loneliness? Anybody got any ideas? Yes? That could be. I started secondary school at 12. They put me it's a bit of my story. But yeah, he was a little younger than most, but only by a year. So that definitely could have an impact. Anything else? Yeah?
His shyness and his inability to approach people kept waiting for them to approach him, which I guess never happened.
I don't know why it works for me. I just sit there and people talk to me. But anyway, yeah, he already has a problem with shyness and timidity. So what happens if you're a teenager and you're shy and you sit in the corner of the dance floor and you don't get up and talk to people? You're going to experience loneliness. You're going to see that shyness as, how did he view his shyness and timidity eventually? Yeah? He has been he has been struggling with loneliness for so long without really dealing with it. Yeah, now it's an ingrained pattern. Now he just thinks about it all the time. He doesn't, nothing really has to happen and he's going to feel lonely. It's just in the back of his mind. It's kind of a constant nagging thought. Yeah.
He stopped. At some point, he stopped learning. So he was trying.
He was trying.
At some point, he stopped. So some rejection, something happened that triggered everything.
Yep.
And then he stopped doing it anymore, right? So he wasn't able maybe to pass that rejection or something, and he got stuck there.
He tried. He definitely tried, but it wasn't working for him and he wasn't able to continue. Why do you think he wasn't able to continue? What? What? No, yeah, his perception was nobody wants me. Okay, so if you think everybody else thinks you're weird and they don't want you there, are you going to try to make connections? Yeah. This is typical of a person with a loneliness problem. Mark is if you talk to people with loneliness, a lot of these issues Mark has, very common with people with loneliness. My dad doesn't like me. My mom doesn't like me. People at school, they think I'm weird. People, and they just view themselves that way, and they look at other people and see other people as an enemy, as a threat. So when you're trying to approach a threat, how do you feel? There's a lot of anxiety that goes with it. And that anxiety just builds up and they have a meltdown. They just can't, he just can't talk to people. It has a little bit more to do with just being shy and timid. Now he's been damaged by being shy and timid and having a bad perception of others, maybe based on some experiences we don't know about. We should kind of ask if something bad happened when he tried to connect to people. But,
maybe not necessarily something bad. It's just if he was in another area for most of his life, knowing everyone or whatever, came to a point in his life where there was a big change, where for the first time he was in an area where he didn't know anyone, and maybe he just didn't know how to do that change.
he moved.
Might have been because of rejection earlier or anything. It just may have been that he just didn't really know, but he was never in that position.
Now, it could be that because where was he before he was 12? He was somewhere else, probably grew up with everybody. And when you grow up with everybody, little kids, they don't care if you're shy. Hi, I'm Susie. Will you be my friend? It's like the kids just naturally go up and talk to other kids. So even if you're shy, somebody will come up and talk to you. So he had a chance of making friends with his shyness earlier in life. And he probably had a pretty good support group where he was. Then his family up and moved someplace. Who knows if it was from a country setting to a city setting, a city setting to a country setting. Anyways, his family moved, and in his new situation, he didn't have the social skills he needed to actually make connections, and he gave up. So there's that. Anything else you can see up here? Yeah? Now, that is what we refer to as existential loneliness. It's looking at your situation and saying, everybody here is apples and I'm an orange, I don't belong. And that is actually a perception of the self, saying, there's something wrong with me. I'm not an apple. And so, of course, the apples aren't going to like me because, I'm an orange or a cherry, or I'm not the same as them. So, yeah. Anything else? Yeah, blew up in his face. Yep. You used to the small talk, but nobody asked the deeper questions. Hey, how you feeling inside? You doing all right today? You know, yeah. Anything else?
Convince himself that he's different, and therefore no one would want to approach him.
Yeah. Remember what I said about perception? If you're looking at life and you're saying, I'm different, everybody else, they don't like me, and you start repeating that enough times, you're going to believe it. He's at the point now. Now, it started in high school, but like Andre said, he's reinforced it so many times. That's now his view in life, and you can't change it. You know, he's just like, nobody cares about me. They don't really want to be my friend anyways. And even if I were to try, they probably just going to make fun of me or something. Anyways, I don't fit in, and I know it, so there's no changing it. It's a little story, but there's a lot in here, isn't there? There's one more big issue here that you haven't touched on yet, but you've kind of hinted at.
It's gonna say he's made this his identity.
What?
He's made this his identity.
Yeah, he is starting to identify as where's that voice coming from? That's one of our online voices, online sick voices. Anyways, yeah, he has said it to himself so many times. He is so convinced it's true. It's such an ingrained pattern. He doesn't even begin to doubt those thoughts anymore. So his identity is, I'm a loser, or, you know, I just don't fit in. There's something wrong with me. What else does that lead to? And specifically, you know, there's something wrong with me. He says that through here. You know, I'm different than anybody else. That's the concept of shame. Shame is when you look at yourself and you say, I'm different than everybody else. There's something broken about me. And what Mark is experiencing is the feeling of shame, which is compounding with his loneliness. And when shame and loneliness team up, it's a double whammy. Because what Mark is feeling, he's saying, unless people want to connect to me and find out my deepest, darkest secret and listen to my heart, unless somebody wants to really love me for who I am, I don't believe they can, because I'm broken. And because I'm broken, I don't really want to let them know the real me. Because if they knew the real me, what would they do? 100% of the time, no questions asked. If they knew the real me, what would they do? Yeah, they would reject me. So I can't let them know the real me because I'm broken. There's something wrong deep down inside, and it hurts. But not only does no one want to know the real me, I can't let them know the real me. And that is the process of shame. And once you start down the road of shame, that is the root of all kinds of bad mental health problems. If you're dealing with alcoholics, you have to deal with shame. If you're dealing with drug addicts, you have to deal with shame. If you deal with a lot of addictive behaviors, you have to deal with shame. If you deal with low self-esteem, a lot of times you have to deal with shame. There is a huge shame problem in a lot of these workshops that we'll be dealing with. We'll do one on shame eventually. Shame is a huge one. Might have to do 2 or 3 of them. But for now, can you see the shame that he's holding in his life? It's there. Anyways, how do you like Mark's story? Any last thoughts on Mark? What would you do if you had met Mark?
Focus on work. Now he's said something that he chose.
Yeah, shame makes you make bad choices. But he chose not to have relationships because he's broken. He figured one day he would automatically fix and he would be everybody's best friend. But life doesn't work that way. If you want to get over something, you have to work at it. But you need a good plan to work on it. It just doesn't happen. Mark is never getting healed of his problem unless he goes through certain steps. And that's true of any problem that we have. Usually, if you just settle into it and say, it'll fix itself, it never fixes itself. If you get a problem in marriage and you and your spouse sit down and say, yeah, it's a huge problem, but let's forget about it. You know, you're not going to listen to me. I'm not going to listen to you. Let's let the problem just work itself out. Does that work in marriage? Doesn't work in marriage. Doesn't work in families. Doesn't work in relationships. It doesn't work with loneliness. And these are just some basic concepts. So, any last questions before we move on from Mark? All right, where does loneliness come from? I'm gonna give you some statistics on loneliness. So this is from a Harvard study. It's a huge study that was done recently with the idea of trying to figure out what can we do different because there are so many lonely people. Sounds like a Beatles song, but anyways, here's the first one, the origin. And they have age groups and they have income groups. And what do you notice about the graph? The people who make the less money are the most lonely. It's also the most lonely are the people between 30 and 45. So this seems to be a middle-aged. Those won't be on your notes. I didn't print the graphs, but they're in the slide that I sent you. So you just have to look up here and just see the pretty colors, and I'll explain it to you. The long line at the top and the long line that you can't see on the second line, that says 29% and 29%. That's roughly 1 in 3 people who are 30 to 44 have a problem with loneliness, and 1 to 3 people who are making under 30,000 or basically around the poverty line will be dealing with loneliness. You might ask why. We'll find out in a second. One of the main reasons why they think that's true. But anyways, as you make more money, the incidences of loneliness seem to drop. But the perception of loneliness seems to drop. It's actually not dropping. So any questions about this? I'll explain it to you. Between the ages of 1 and 10, you're running around as kids, you're making friends, life is good. And then you start junior high and high school, and the people in junior high and high school actually have a high incidence of loneliness. That's because you go to school, and what does everybody do? I'm not going to be your friend. You're ugly, and they call you names and they start to bully you, and bullying causes loneliness. So you get to 18 to 29, and what have you figured out? You figured out that, let's just go to school. You start dating. What happens when you start dating? Most dates don't work out, right? You date this guy, for half a year, all of a sudden, a relationship's gone. You're lonely. And you find somebody else. You go back and forth on the rebound, and you can't seem to make really good relationships. So then you get married. And when you get married in your 20s, things go well until 30 to 44. 30 to 44 is the divorce range. If you're between the ages of 28 to 48, guess what will probably happen in your life? That's where most divorces take place. How come? Because what happens is 60% of lonely people are married. And what they say is they come in for counseling, And married people look at the counselor and say, I'm lonely in my relationship. My partner doesn't cut it for me anymore. And what happens is they start fighting about, you're not meeting my needs and I'm not meeting your needs. So let's just get a divorce and we'll find somebody new. And that's why that rate is so high.
Surprised though, because I always kind of perceived that more rich people probably had less relationships because they were more focused on money. Poor people
Yeah, I got no cash, so let's sit at home and talk to people.
And I heard being in Cuba, the church there, they were all like family to each other. They leave their job and they all come to practice, not for church services, just for hanging out. And they were all like big family, but these people were all in poverty. They're like the poorest people I ever met, and yet they're the happiest, most friendliest, and friendship-centered type people I met.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you are dealing with 30% of the population, what you're talking about is another 30% that go to church, have strong community, and aren't facing loneliness. So if it was 100%, you could say, yeah, those people in Cuba should be lonely. But even in the worst scenario, you're not making much money in North America. Only 1 in 3 people are going to feel that sense of loneliness. And, 21, 19, and 18, you drop one person off the statistic. So instead of 2 out of 3 people, it's, 3 out of 4 or 4 out of, or 1 out of 5. So just because a statistic is high doesn't mean everybody in that statistic has that problem. Remember what I said, loneliness is a what? A perception of your situation in life. I tell you right now, I'm up around 100K, so I got an 18% chance of being lonely. If you took all my wages away when I retire and you give me what the government of Canada is going to give me, I'm going to be down at under 30K. If I still know all you guys, it's not going to really affect my perception of loneliness, because there's a whole bunch of other factors rather than just making money. It's friendships and relationships. And you see how that works? So yeah, there are some poor people who are happy. There's some rich people who are real happy. But if you're going to go with the average, there are more lonely people who are making less money than people who are making more money. And we'll find out why in a second. In this statistic, you will find out that lonely people, 67%. So 2 out of 3 people who are lonely actually experience bad anxiety. You will also find out that 2 out of 3 people who are lonely also experience depression. Now, what is that graph telling you? It is telling you that loneliness has friends. And what the researchers are finding out, that if you're struggling with loneliness, you are probably a very anxious person and have anxiety disorders, and you probably are struggling with depression or meaning in life. And you put those 3 together, it's kind of like the 3 amigos. You got loneliness, sadness, anxiety, and depression. You put those 3 together, and what do you have? A very unhappy, unhealthy person who's going to crack. And these are people that are really need to in some way change. They need to drop that 67%. They need to work on something. They have found in the research that if you don't work on loneliness, anxiety and depression are kind of like the other 3 horsemen of the loneliness apocalypse, and they'll start showing up. They also show that if you have too much anxiety, depression and loneliness show up. So they don't know which one's first, but they know these three hang together pretty. They're kind of like bosom buddies. You know, if you see me in public, Sonia's probably with me. That's just the way we work. Now, does Sonia go out first or do I go out first? We kind of go out together. And when she's there, I'm there. When I'm there, she's there. Who decided to go first? It really doesn't matter. We hang out together. And so it's kind of like these emotions. And they only looked at these two emotions. There's other emotions that hang out with loneliness. It's just the way it's just the statistics they found. They found out when they interviewed lonely people, 2 out of 3 people that indicated they were lonely as opposed to not too much, they found out that these two emotions they were struggling with as well. Yeah? Uh-huh. It's just a statistic. I haven't studied the graphs too much. I'm sure they don't add up to 100. They're looking at people. Some of the people that have feel less or non-lonely, which is the color you can't see, those people and the 67 should pretty much add up to 100. But anyways, overall, the average is 33%. So in the first graph, 1 in 3 people experience anxiety who aren't experiencing loneliness. But 2 out of 3 people who are experiencing loneliness also experience anxiety. So you can have anxiety without loneliness. You can have loneliness without anxiety. So they don't have to team up, but they will often team up. Does that make sense? Okay, and it's the same with depression. People who are depressed, you can have a great support group and still be depressed, not experience loneliness. So they don't have to hang out together, but researchers are finding out they often team up in 2 out of 3 cases. So anyways, it's something for doctors to be aware of. In this one, the dimensions of loneliness, you see how the lonely people are really high. I have to be able to read this, but there's not enough close. Yeah, my eyes are bad. These are the answers that people would give you for why they are lonely. So the first one is they're not close to their family. So people who don't have close family members experience high loneliness. Sometimes there's no deep emotional support. That's the second one. Sometimes they have no meaningful groups that they belong to. One answer to loneliness is joining a group that loves you. But they don't have any groups that love them. And when that happens, 2 out of 3 people who were lonely said, I don't have a group that I belong to. They're not part of the country. These next 4 are existential. These are people that like, yeah, I'm Canadian, but I don't feel like part of Canada. Disconnected from others or from the world. The place in the world isn't important. Like, I'm not accomplishing anything. I'm just living my life. If I died, I wouldn't make a difference. People want to make a difference. People want to make a change. They like helping people. But there are some people that just feel, they're on planet Earth and it just doesn't make a difference. Why did my parents give me birth? It's like, I'm no good here. Some of them feel disconnected from themselves. Basically means some people with a loneliness problem look at their lives and they say, there's something wrong with me. I don't feel like I belong. I don't feel, and because they don't feel connected to people, They think there is an actual problem with who they are. And that's the shame aspect. This next one, these next two. This one talks about barriers to social connections. Don't really share true self with others. So loneliness, people with loneliness do what more than other people? Yeah, you're never going to see the real me. And that's why they're lonely, because they are threatened by the thought that you might know me. They want the attention, they want the love, they want the concern, but there's a problem there because they don't really want you to know them. And because they really don't want you to know them, they're never convinced that you really do care. Because there's always the thought in the back of their mind, if you knew the real me, you wouldn't like me. Yeah? Oh, there is lots of reasons why we're guarded. Anybody here not protect themselves from others? We all do it. The problem is people with loneliness protect themselves from their spouses and even the friends they have. It is a huge problem. If you've got good friends in your life, do you share yourself with them? Sure. Usually you let them inside, right? Lonely people often don't let anybody inside, even their closest friends, because they think they're broken. They think, you don't really want to know me, but I'll take what you got. So anyways, or they don't know how to form close friendships. That is a skill problem. Mark had that problem. He really didn't know how to make deep friendships. How many people have taken a course in how to make a deep connection? For most of us, it just happens. You know, we grow up with somebody, and we've been friends their whole life, and you're just connected. But when you move and you meet new people, how do you get past the surface? How do you get to the place where they know you and you know them? And that is a struggle in most marriages, let alone friendships. Number 3 is they are too busy, tired to reach out consistently. If you are always working for a paycheck and you need 2 jobs, what are you constantly doing? You're constantly tired. And there's a lot of emotional stuff that goes into being tired. And the people that aren't making enough money, what do they have to do to make ends meet? They usually have to work harder than the people who are making a lot of money, right? And it's that emotional tiredness, that physical tiredness that is keeping them from really making connections. Lastly, mental health gets in the way of connecting. A lot of times people who are lonely don't want others to really know them because they know if you knew me, you wouldn't like me. So there's actually an area of our mental health that says, I'm really stuck being lonely because I can't share anything, but I don't have any way of connecting, because in order to connect, I have to risk. And if I risk, you're going to reject. And I know that, so I'm not going to try. And so 60% of people who are lonely actually feel they have something in their lives that they can't connect to others with. Yeah? That's they don't know how to form close friendships. They're missing skills. And one of the skills people miss is, especially for men, how do you feel? Angry. You know, how do you feel here? A little less angry. Well, what about here? Just kind of just a little angry. Don't you mean frustrated? No, angry. So yeah, if your emotional intelligence is limited to like me, it's anger. How do you feel? Angry. How do you feel? Not so angry. But if you have a huge vocabulary, well, I'm not really feeling angry. I'm feeling a little upset. And I'm upset because, and you can delineate exactly why. So yeah, there are some skill sets that lonely people don't have. And they aren't really able to express what's happening. And they really scared of opening up and exploring some of that. So you got it. This lot. The what? Yeah. Yeah, I didn't explain this fully. That one is the divorce range. 45 to 64 is when you actually start to figure it out and you say, you know what? I don't care anymore. And then after 65, it's like, well, you know what? I'm going to die soon. I don't care about, just give me, send me to the doctors. And you actually find out the older you get, it doesn't seem like a huge deal that you're different from everybody else because you've learned everybody's different. So the older you get, the more wisdom tends to reduce loneliness. But in that critical range, 30 to 44, the divorce range, yeah, people are just crying. You're not meeting my needs. I'm not meeting your needs. And it just all blows up. So yeah, you're catching on to what these graphs are saying. And here's the last one. This is adults' perception of why they are so lonely. 73% of lonely people say it's technology. It's Facebook, my cell phone, and TV. And they're actually blaming their cell phones that they're on all the time while workshops are going on. Not even so anyways, I don't think technology is that much of a problem, although they have all kinds of studies to show that people who spend too much time on Facebook are lonelier than people who don't spend any time on Facebook. But
spend a lot of time online playing games with people see people that they've never even met.
yeah,
They don't have friendships to the same degree like we had growing up.
no connections. At 6 o'clock on Sunday night, growing up, I would always be home. What came on at 6 o'clock Sunday night on the TV growing up?
Wonderful World of Disney.
Oh yeah, man, you would never miss that. It's like the TV cemented our family because nobody in my family wanted to miss that. Before that, it was Mutual of Omaha Wild Kingdom. This could be dangerous. I'll watch. But anyways, then after there was something on at 7, and then 8 o'clock started with Charlie's Angels or something else. Yeah, well, and so technology back in the day used to cement families. Now you can watch online in your bedroom, and so there's some there's clues out everybody else. I know it.
When I was his age, I was out there with people.
Yeah, it's all out there. Family back quality time together. 66 say we don't have good family time. I'm gonna go down from 2/3 down to about 1/2. Working too much, busy, exhausted. Mental health hurting relationships comes in again. Individualistic society. A lot of people that are who feel lonely have this idea that, you know what, everybody's concerned about themselves, nobody's concerned about me. Lacking relationship skills, 57%. No religion or spiritual connections, no meaningful group to get together and care for. Too much focus on feelings. I don't know how that got in there, but man, lonely people think that there's too much focus on feelings and not enough focus on closeness. It's pretty funny statistic. Workplaces aren't communities. You just work and they kick you out. They don't care about you anymore. Remote hybrid work is having an impact. Fearing close relationships is 43%. So not only do lonely people desire close relationships, don't know how to do it, but they're also scared of it. At least almost half of them. So, but that's true of a lot other people than just experiencing loneliness. And then there's few opportunities or for community stuff. Yeah. It's yeah, vulnerability is big, but very often people don't know how to fix their problem. And so vulnerability crosses the spectrum here, and they're just scared of it. Because if you open yourself up, what are you going to risk? If you're vulnerable, what are you going to risk? Everything that you're scared of and everything that you're trying to hide. And you got to battle shame and you got to battle a whole bunch of other things, and it just doesn't work very well. Well, anyways, these are the top perceptions. As you went through this list, what did you notice? Any kind of overall things you saw connecting everything? Did you like the statistics?
With technology, all that stuff, if you're not spending time on kind of a team atmosphere that makes people spend, then you know you're going to be more putting yourself in that.
Yeah, there's definitely a need for community, but because it's a perception, loneliness, there's a lot of people who show up to community things and don't feel they belong. So even though you might belong to a community, if your thinking is negative towards community or you're scared of closeness, even being part of a loving community can have can have a negative effect. I'm thinking about being a black sheep of the family. Black sheep is the one person in the family that everybody picks on. You know that one person that, the sisters and the brothers, everybody's like, oh, when you're a black sheep, even your closest family doesn't seem that close because they're always picking on you. They're doing this, they're doing that. So there's so much to consider, but there's a lot of problems here with closeness, fear, relationships, skills, and emotions. And those statistics are pretty consistent when you look at them as a whole. Loneliness has many causes, not just a single factor. It's linked with other emotions. It's associated with a lack of intimacy and closeness, mostly because you don't fear, you don't know how, or you're too scared to try, or there's a lot of shame. And there is a desire for a community, even though community means you need to open yourself up to all that. So if you're looking at loneliness as more of a spectrum, if you had a strong family growing up, you didn't have too many emotional problems, you might not experience loneliness that much. If on the other side, you had an abusive or neglectful family and there's a lot of shame, you don't have many friends, you're going to experience it on the higher side. That is generally the trend. Now, you can have a strong family, everything in your life can be going great. And if you still have the perception that it's all wrong, what's going to happen? So even if there aren't that many real factors in your life that point to loneliness, you can experience chronic loneliness if your perception is that it all stinks. So just keep that in mind. Are we there? Are we? I got 20 minutes left in this seminar and we gotta fly. All right. Thanks for coming. See you later. While loneliness is a complex emotion with many contributing factors, many researchers see it as a byproduct of our unmet needs deep down. Something is missing in our lives. 58% feel like no one knows them well. 52% reporting feeling lonely, while report that their relationships with others are not meaningful. We long for connection, relationships that are deep, relationships that are concerned about us, people that love us. And a lot of people who have problems with loneliness don't feel that they have any kind of people around them that really fit that bill. There's huge opportunity for working on mental health in this area. Here are some top 10. I think it's in your worksheet. When we are talking about unmet needs, guess where most of them start? In your childhood. So here are 10 fundamental childhood needs. I'll give you a second to look at that. You can say, oh, then and now. You had that need as a child, but you don't have it now, or you had that need as a child and you have it now, or you didn't need that when you were a kid, but you need it now. Number one, to feel that you belong somewhere and are part of the larger web of life. Number two, to attach to others in a secure way and know it is safe to be vulnerable and show your needs. Man, I didn't have that when I was a kid. If I showed anything like that, I got whomped. So it was run for your life if, you know. Number three, to be seen for who you are and have your feelings mirroring. To have help and guidance that is calibrated to your needs. The next one, to receive encouragement and support, to feel that someone is behind you. To have others serve as a model for you and teach you skills that you need to succeed. To have needs met in a timely way, to be comforted and soothed when you are upset, thus establishing an ability to soothe yourself and bring your system back into balance, self-regulation. To have adequate protection so that you are safe and not overwhelmed. To be treated in a way that communicates respect for your boundaries, your needs, your feelings, etc., to feel loved and cared for. These are 10 childhood needs that kids basically thirst for. And if you give it to them, they have a pretty good childhood. If you don't give it to them, what happens? It becomes an unmet emotional need that they try to fulfill later in life. And guess what happens when they try to fulfill it later in life? Nobody wants to take a guess?
They do it on the wrong way.
They either do it the wrong way with addictions and stuff, or what? Or their perception is they're never going to get it, and they keep looking for it, and they go way over. They go way overboard, and they're still looking for it, but they have the belief they're never going to find it. When two people get married, you see this all the time. I see this in pre-marriage counseling. I can almost write the history of their next 10 years when I do marriage counseling, because they will tell me this other person meets all my needs. And I'm sitting there going, no one person other than God meets all your needs. It just doesn't work. So they will meet some of your needs. They might meet most of your needs, but they cannot meet all your needs. But everybody I've met goes into marriage saying, this is the one I need. They're going to solve all my problems. Life just feels so right when we're together, we're in love. And I'm like, what about this problem? Oh, it's taken care of. What about it's taken care of? It's taken care of. There's nothing you can say that's going to ruin the love between us. And I'm like, all right, come back in a year. And then we'll talk about this again every time. When these needs aren't met in your past, you try to meet them in the present, usually in marriage. And when you put that much pressure on your spouse to give you what you need, what is your spouse doing? Feeling pressure and stressed because they're doing the same thing back to you. And I could do a seminar on this effect in marriage, because two people not having their needs met, focused on one another, is very stressful, and it starts to raise the stress, starts to feel threatening. And when it starts to feel threatening, what is the marriage relationship not at that point? It's not safe anymore. And when you don't feel safe, what happens? What happens when you don't feel safe in a relationship?
Protect yourself.
That's what you start doing. And when the two spouses start to protect themselves from each other, they start to grow apart. And that's called the roommate syndrome. And then they just give up. And it's classic marriage behavior. And it starts with these 10 basic needs. Anyways, let's go into what's missing. We go to Sarah's story. Are you ready for Sarah's story? I got to read it quick, and then we get to what to do about it. Complex post-traumatic stress disorder often develops due to chronic exposure to traumatic situations, especially those involving interpersonal relationships. Unmet emotional needs play a significant role in development. So Sarah grew up in a dysfunctional and abusive family environment. Her parents were emotionally distant, frequently arguing, rarely expressed affection or validation, and Sarah had the following unmet emotional needs from her childhood. These three: emotional validation, safety and security, connecting and belonging. She missed those three, and she was always thirsting for those. When she became an adult, what happened? As she entered adulthood, she started having problems with emotional regulation. She just had explosive anger, explosive emotions. She was very unstable. Interpersonal difficulties, couldn't keep friendships. Are these sounding like people you know? Negative self-concept, not very positive about who they are. Repetition of traumatic patterns, always getting stuck in the same situation over and over and over again in every relationship. And then there was complex trauma, which over the years she experienced multiple events because she's making the wrong choices based on the needs that were not met in her childhood. Sarah is a typical person you might meet who has really bad loneliness problems. And they're stemming from her childhood, just an absent father, neglectful mother, anything like that. So how to deal with loneliness? Any questions about Sarah? We're running out of time, so I'm trying to get it real quick. Any questions about Sarah? You can tell that she had a terrible childhood and it followed her into her adulthood. That's the key takeaway. And when it follows her into adulthood, the patterns get worse and worse, and she just does everything she can to find those needs to get met, to the point of blowing up and being very unstable. And that's when loneliness starts to do real big damage. So one thing about loneliness, it involves our thoughts and feelings. We need to change our perception of ourselves and others. If you have some negative thoughts, you actually begin to produce negative emotions, which produces negative behavior, and it goes around in this cycle. The triggering event was you didn't get invited to a birthday party. You ever hear a kid who doesn't get invited to a birthday party? Why don't they like me? You know, it starts this cycle. If you want to stop a cycle like that, what do you have to do? You take the same event, but you have to put a different spin on it. This is the work of dragging yourself out of things like loneliness, depression, anxiety. I didn't get invited to the birthday party. Well, what's a positive thought? Well, I have other parties that I can go to. I didn't need to go to that one. Or I have other people in my life that support me. Or maybe you can come up with some thoughts. You change your emotions when you change your thoughts. You can change your actions. What can I do differently? Well, you know what? Maybe I'm not very close to some of the people that were in that party. Maybe I can build relationships with them. And there has to be a way of changing your thinking. So get to this page, you have a thought. Just take any thought. Do all of us have negative thoughts? Put it in there on the top, and then say, is my thought factual? Is it a real thought backed up by hard data? Probably isn't. If we were doing Mark, what's one of Mark's thoughts? I'm different than everybody else. Is that backed up by factual data? It's not backed up by factual data. So you go to the third one. What evidence do I have to support that thought? There's no evidence. You go down, what would someone else say about that situation? You ask another person's opinion. They say, well, you're not different than anybody else. You're just misunderstood, or you're just this, or you're just that. You go down to the last one. Is it possible to draw this situation differently? And you write the new thought that you want to insert. So if your old thought is, I'm different than everybody else, what's your new thought? Just going through this quickly. What? That is a fact. I am not different than anybody else. I'm just like everybody else. Could you put that thought in? What's the problem with that? You don't really believe it, do you? So you have to keep doing it. You have to take these new thoughts and you have to plug them in, and you have to replace, you have to stop the old thinking when it starts, plug the new thinking in, and just keep on continuing with it. This is a habit that you just have to get used to. When I was struggling with depression in my teen years, I came across this method. And every morning before I left for school, I would look in the mirror, and I would just say to myself, I am not different than everybody else. God loves me. God will never abandon me. And I went through some truths, and I just repeated them about 30 times. I did that like for a half an hour every morning. And when I did that for 2 or 3 years, my thoughts, my emotions started changing. It takes a little while, but it catches on. Another thing you can do with help your overall health with loneliness is practice gratitude, giving thanks for what you have. Little gratitude chart. Anybody thankful today for something? Anything? What are you thankful for? Life, health. Hey, just fill out the chart, and every day take a few minutes to be thankful for the things that God has brought into your life. Gratitude will help change most unhealthy emotions. And if you're not practicing gratitude and you're griping and complaining, that's the essence of complaining. I'm not thankful that you brought this into my life. You brought that into my life. what you need to do is just change your thinking and start being thankful.
In Crosby at White Christmas, sings that song, "You Can't Really Bless It." Good rules to live by. I do that each morning to give thanks for
Good rule to live
what I
by.
have, who I have.
Yep. Good rule to live by. Spend more time thanking than complaining. A third area is working on developing skills to deepen relationships. I have a huge relationship book at home that has probably about 100 worksheets in it of things you can do to deepen relationships. And you get 5 of those worksheets, you start working on it for a couple weeks. Then you get another 5, you start working on that for a couple weeks. And as you increase your skills, you will actually deepen some of your relationships, and loneliness would actually start to decrease. And a fourth area we can look at is getting out and joining a group, becoming part of a community, be it religious, hobby related, or just new sport, a place to practice your new relationship skills. And the last thing, the last slide, if you are going to join a community, you have to make sure of these things. One, it's a place of safety. What is the biggest problem with loneliness? One of the major factors is you don't have a safe place to really open your heart up to. And you're blocking people. And you don't trust the people around you, so you can't really join groups. You can't really go anywhere, and you have to keep people at a distance. If you are going to open your heart up and begin healing, you have to find a place where you're safe. You have to find a group of people or a situation where you are 100% safe, or at least 98% safe, maybe 96, 95 will do. A place where you're safe. I know that if I shared something with David, it's 100% safe. I can share with David whatever, and we have that relationship. It's a place of safety. I also can share stuff with Mike. He'll laugh at me. But it's not as safe as maybe David, but he will be concerned, and he will be a place of safety. Same with Andrea. I have all these people in my life that I can trust, and basically I'm at a safe place. If you don't feel safe, you're under stress and cortisol. You need a place with safe people. So not only a good group, they have to be safe people in there. I know if I share something with most of you guys, it's never going to go anywhere. If I share with you a secret, nobody else is going to hear that secret. You probably laugh at it, right? In your diary, oh, Jamie said this. But you won't be putting it on the airwaves. You need a place where you can be open. A safe place is a place where you can be vulnerable, and you won't get trashed. A place where you can hear truth. You have to be able to hear what's wrong and what thoughts you need replacing, and then you need a place where you're loved. If you are not loved in that safe place, it's really not a safe place. If you can find a community that practices these values, it is a place where you can begin healing with loneliness and other things. And we'll talk more about that in the future. All right. Any questions? Any thoughts? It's almost 1 o'clock, so we got to get ready real quick. There's more slides? Well, not ones I'm going to go after. This is just an example of a verse from Scripture that can give you a lot of a sense of love from God. Time for a poll. Oh, there we go. You want me to go to the end? All right. Yeah, we're gonna talk about anxiety next on the 29th. A weekly? You know how much research goes into this? a sermon I can make up in a good 8 or 10 hours. This takes about 40 to 50 hours. So not while I'm not retired. If I was retired, I could maybe pump one out every week, but I'm committing to once a month, and you guys are going to help me when I send out little, can you help me do this? So anyways, all right, we're done. We're finished. Thanks everybody for showing up. Thanks for everybody for being online. Ooh, I gotta.
Negative. And there are